So I think the beach is the place where we sort of were shaped as a species. But it's for science to prove. I allow myself some digressions here. Anyway, how has this affected us, the fact that we used to live in small tribes on beaches and on the savannah? Well, of course, that has affected our bodies. So the senses we have are adjusted for spotting food. I mean, aware of that the purpose of everything we do is survival and reproduction, right? So the senses we have are developed for us to discover danger and to find food. And the senses we have for smelling and taste, they are also fine-tuned for, okay, is this apple fresh or not? Is this berry? Oh, it's bitter, then I shouldn't eat it. I mean, it's so ingrained in how we use these senses. But if you reflect upon them, it could have been very different. But if it tastes sweet, it's probably good for us, so then we eat more of it. And also the fact that we're a social species. So many things that define our bodies is very much related to what we find attractive in the other sex. And also the fact that we're social, so we're tuned to talking and interacting and listening to other people's voices and sort of tuning into other people's emotions is also a very, very developed trait in us. No other sort of animal has the same capability to understand the feelings of other in their species. And however, we don't live on the savannah anymore or the beach. We live in a modern welfare society. And that means that a lot of things that were really good, sort of psychological and physical traits, when we lived in this old setting, are actually not so helpful now in modern society. We love to stuff ourselves with salt and fat and sugary stuff. Now that is a problem today. It was great when you lived on the savannah and these things weren't available 24/7. The kind of fast decision making that we normally apply to, that we make decisions based on instinct instead of reflecting, okay, is this really a good thing? And you get data together and you make a proper decision. Most of the time, if you're on the savannah, you make a quick decision, okay, should I fight with this baboon or should I run, right? And I would also like to say that the idea of like racism, which is of course a big problem in present society, it's in fact deeply psychologically ingrained. It's programmed into our mind because when you lived in this primitive state, and there was some other tribe of people who came and they looked a little bit different, the best strategy was to be a bit skeptical about that group because you didn't know what they were up to. Because we didn't have the systems of social proof that we do nowadays to recognize that strangers are not as dangerous. And this simple principle that someone else has a different hair color is psychologically programmed for us to recognize that. And also other things like the willingness to compete very aggressively for limited resources. But now that we live in abundance, or we are coming there, it's maybe not so critical for us to gather all these resources and have the biggest houses and have all these cars. It was a good strategy in the old days, but now that we have everything available, it's not so important. Sexuality can be debated. I think it served a different purpose then. Now that we have all these, we have DNA analysis and we have prevention methods and so forth. So it's also slightly different now, but our primate brains hasn't adjusted to all this new technology. However, so what the thesis I'm of course building here, that we changing our bodies with technology is positive and a desirable thing. And interestingly, if you look at history, we humans have always been using, it's not new to use technology to upgrade our bodies. In fact, you could think of course, using clothes is definitely a way to upgrade the body. Using fire, as someone put it nicely, it's in fact moving out your intestine out of your body because you pre-digest the food. And our bodies are not so well tuned to eating raw meat, but when it's cooked, we can digest it very nicely, and it's also more hygienic. And the skin here is from Ötzi the snowman that they found in ice in Austrian Alps. He had plenty of tattoos. So I think humans have sort of, and probably it's to guess, but did he and his culture, did they see these tattoos as mere decorations? Or was it possibly related to what they thought was technology? Magic. Okay, so you have a symbol of something. You can't see it very well, but maybe this represented the protection from some spirit or some disease. We can only speculate, but the fact that they with the best technology they had, which was their magic and their beliefs, they also tried to upgrade their bodies. And wearing eyeglasses is another typical example of more modern times to say that you've upgraded your body. Now, coming to the present, I'd like to build my thesis, and no presentation on technology is, of course, complete without a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger. What I like to say is we already live in the age of cyborgs, because around us, millions of people walk down the streets of the world today wearing advanced technology inside their bodies. The thing is just that they don't look like that. They look more like this. These are 3 cyborgs. because they are wearing normally we use this technology for treatment when we get old, right? So people are wearing pacemakers or insulin pumps or other increasingly complex devices. We have cochlear implants to improve your hearing, hip implants. They are not as smart. It's more of just a technical thing, but definitely it's also a body upgrade. And linking into all the stuff that we have been talking about here, there are other speakers who have covered this quite extensively, so I won't, but I see that this is a whole ecosystem now of wearable and sort of in-body type devices. And the difference from the medical devices is also some of these are used by healthy people. And here are some buzzwords. I personally like the term underwear, for stuff you wear under your skin. And you have the wearables and the medtech implants. And we also are seeing a very impressive development in these smart prosthetics that are replacing human limbs. And there are some awesome videos on YouTube where people who have lost an arm, you can see them cracking eggs. Very delicate. Picking grapes and eating them, without crushing. And they're just steering these prosthetics with the nerves and the muscles that remain. So it's a pretty impressive development. And looking at Moore's law and all these other trends, do you think it will end here? Or do you think that this stuff will just advance even more rapidly? It's a fair assumption, right? Knowing what we know. So electronic medical implants are widespread. Fitness and health trackers, we're seeing sort of these Indiegogo and Kickstarter, they're just flooded with new items like this all the time. And what is cool about this particular industry is that it's not only small innovations, but also the biggest players are doing this. So Google and Samsung and Apple are also into this field. So it was a tremendous focus and tremendous development of this industry right now. We also see the weaknesses with this technology. Not everyone is as fanatic as Anders, who spoke earlier today. Most people, more than 50%, they buy something and they stop using it within 6 months. It's just, maybe it gives a little value, but what I find in modern society is that people don't want more stuff to carry around and to worry about. You have already when you walk out the door in the morning, you say, okay, do I have keys, wallet, phone, glasses, handbag, and then I need to take my Fitbit as well. It's just one more item that clutters your life, right? So I don't think we've seen the end of that of sort of that development. Okay, here's another example of neural prosthetics. This leads me into an area which I find interesting. Sorry, it's hard to find a place to stand where. Maybe I should stand over here so everyone can see. Body hacking. Body hacking is what? Body hacking is what we healthy people do to see if, I mean, for us it's to be healthy is kind of, it's nice, but what else can you do? What is beyond that? And here's sort of this is an overview, and someone else would probably have some other stuff in here, but I just wanted to give you sort of an overview of this interesting field. And so we have these well-known methods that probably most of you guys have tried, and you can read about them in any sort of health magazine. And it's about exercise and managing your sleep and eating nutritious food, and taking some supplements, meditation to improve your focus, etc. So this is the vanilla color. So a little bit more tasty is the chocolate. And these are the more emerging ones. These are not yet mainstream, but you find them in user groups like Quantified Self. You read about students who take these smart drugs that improve concentration. It need not be illegal drugs, but it's normally prescription drugs. But they work just as fine for people who are healthy. If you haven't slept well, or if you're jet lagged, for example, it's really useful to manage sort of your sleep cycle, for example, with this kind of nootropics. And we have this exciting precision medicine initiative that even President Obama talked about in his recent State of the Union address. This idea that now, yes, we need to start mapping the DNA of people, because you and I, we have different genes, so we respond differently to medicines. And sort of the medical profession hasn't yet recognized that broadly. So they prescribe the same medicine to everyone based on some kind of normalization understanding. And this is another thing, electrical brain stimulation, that we play with in the biohacker community in Stockholm. So with a little bit of electricity on your brain, you can actually improve focus and concentration and stuff if you play computer games for the whole night. Which I can't do anymore, unfortunately, since I have kids. But and anyway, then we have the more exciting, this is exotic fruit color. The most exciting and promising things. So imagine when you can sort of start working with your own, changing your own metabolism by infecting yourself with a new virus, for example. Or let's say you can infect yourself with the virus, and so your body can again begin to synthesize its own vitamin C. This is a trait that we humans for some reason lost. Most big mammals can create their own vitamin C in their bodies. We lost it. Interesting why, but we can probably restore that ability for us. And the integration human-machine, we'll get back to that in a little while. So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about these implants, if people find that exciting. What we've been doing in the Swedish biohacker community is we've been arranging these implant parties. And as you see, it's a cool mix of people that go to these events. So different ages and geeks and you know, proper hackers. And these people have all become good friends of mine because we now share the same birthday, right? The birthday when we were upgraded. So we say, Happy New Birthday, we say to each other after we've upgraded. And it's a light-hearted way of sort of exploring technology. And also, what I like to do is when you experiment with technology, it's much better to do it together, because then you learn and you share experiences. And by having these people or interact with each other, we together build something more than if it's just a whole bunch of random people. Yeah, we have a question. He's a hacker, or this guy? No, it's not Svartholm. No, it's Daniel. He's in Svartholm. He's in jail. Sorry to. We'll free him. Yeah.
Have you ever been to to build a bear shop? Because it kind of reminds me of that when they have these bears, they build a little art in it, and it gets life and a birth certificate. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah. I mean, we're very much inspired by pop culture and doing fun stuff based on, it should be lighthearted. It's not a life-changing thing to do. It's more of a fun experiment. That's how we see it. And for some reason it's gotten a lot of attention. But on a more serious side, we're also sort of looking at what are the implications of having smart implants in your body. And looking at, as I've already made clear, I don't like to carry stuff around. I haven't worn a watch for 20 years. And I still think it sucks to have to carry keys and wallet. And if you look, why do we carry most of this stuff? This is just identification devices. This is to say that I'm the person who has the right to go into this building, to go into use that vehicle, to get into that locker. And same thing here. This is the documents that prove that I can go to the library, that I have the right to drive a car, that I have the right to enter this building or get a discount in this shop. It's all this stuff we carry around. It's just a way to identifying ourselves. And observation is that what I did in just a few months since let me just finish this point. In the few months since I got my implant, I've replaced all these things with my implant. So gym card, membership cards, some key fobs, lock for my bike, my business card. They now all sit here. And it has certainly made my life a little bit easier. And a bit more exciting as well. And you also have all these systems where we log into our digital devices. I mean, how many of you think it's fun to remember PIN codes and passwords? It's just a pain. Our primate brains are not made to remember PIN codes. We want other ways to interact with technology, other ways to identify ourselves. What is a natural way for us humans to interact? Well, speaking and touching. This is how I like to identify myself. I don't want to walk up to my door and have to dig through my pockets for a certain metal piece. Oops, what happened? I want to walk up to a door and just put my hand on the handle and say, hey, I'm home. And then it opens for me. And that's a two-factor verification, right? Voice and touch. Sorry, we need to rewind this. We were here. Yeah. So anyway, and worse, it's not safe. Yeah.
Just concerning these PIN codes and stuff, there was an article last year with the American legislation policies where the writer was talking about this fact that according to law, if you have something in your mind, no attorney can ever get that out of you.
Right.
You have like a fingerprint or especially a chip.
Did they explicitly include the chip there? Yeah.
No, but there's no file. So they can, of course, force you to open up a safe, open up the door.
I see. Yeah. Well, this may not be the ultimate solution. I say this works for certain security cases. And you maybe shouldn't put the code to go in your private safe where you keep all your gold. You maybe need a safer system than this, because these, are not super safe. But yeah, this is one question that arises, and I think we should fight back, because people shouldn't have the right to take all such data away from us. Yeah, we have someone waving over here.
I was just wondering about the security of the device itself. So it's NFC, is it just, it has a unique identification number, and you go and you introduce yourself with the same identification number everywhere, which means that I could go after you with an NFC reader, read the identification number, make my own, and then with a recording of your voice, I can break into your house.
Exactly. Yeah, that can be done. You can also steal my keys and break into my house. So, which is probably simpler.
But this is something that I can do without you knowing, because that's already been demonstrated.
It's correct that this is not super safe technology, and this is why I'm saying that it can be used for the right type of things. So since I'm a Swedish guy living in a rather safe country, that I unlock my bike with my chip, I think is relatively safe. But if I had a Tesla and I was driving through the back streets of some city in a war zone, I would probably not be very smart to use this kind of technology. So you have to relate it to the level of safety you want. But this is not a secret, it's true. You shouldn't put anything on this that you're not willing to write on your own T-shirt, because people can read this from when you walk around. Yes?
I was just thinking it's probably easy to create a model that generates a unique number for every entry, and then the device will recognize that it's still from you.
True, and you can use this for some interesting encryption purposes as well, which I'm just going to talk about now. So just looking at this hand and the stuff I put in, is there anyone who recognizes the trend here? So, do you remember? Some of you guys were around here at this time, right? So, all these junk devices.
I wasn't born yet.
Lucky you. You seen this slide? Yeah. Oh, we had all this junk, right? Oh, this is a music player. Camera, phone, watch. I don't even know what this is.
Pager.
Oh, pager. Oh, people have pagers. Video camera, and this was some silly note thing, and now it's all here, and we know that this does a lot more stuff than all these things go together. So similarly, maybe we can replace all these keys that is technology is long overdue for phasing out with something smarter. I'm not going to talk super much about this because there are so many other exciting areas, so I'm just going to run through some interesting user cases for this particular technology. And there are sort of two main areas. It's the identification and the information carrier. So ultimately, for example, by having a unique ID in your hand, you can personalize and create a security level for all kinds of technology in the Internet of Things around us. Let's say, okay, we don't live in the States, but maybe some of you guys maybe have handguns in your homes anyway. Hopefully not. But imagine the principle. Some people waving in the back. Good. Imagine that we are just building this now in the Stockholm Makerspace to prove the concept. With a soft air gun. That you can have a security mechanism that is only activated when it's proximity to your implant. That means you have a gun that can only be used in your hand. So if you have children in your home or there is a burglar that comes into your house, they can never use that gun. It's only the person who has the implant. And you can apply that to your, electrical toothbrush as well, right? You don't want your partner to use your toothbrush. You can safe lock it away, and when she touches it, it blinks red. Right. Or we have the whole personalization of technology around us. Let's say you and your partner, or me and my partner, we share the same car, but with somewhat different body sizes. So whenever she's been driving, I have to readjust the wheel and the mirrors and the seats, and it's a bit of a pain. So let's just put this cheap reader that costs $5 in the steering wheel. So when I put my hand on the wheel, the car knows it's me coming into the car, and then adjusts the seats, the mirror, and even plays the right music channel for me. So this is the kind of personalization that this wearable technology very easily brings to us. Another super exciting area is the activity logging. And why are we not all like Anders Nissen, who logs all these things? Because it's just too much work, right? But let's imagine if we could make it easier. I already go into the gym by just swiping my hand today, but what I would like to do is, of course, to be able to swipe the gym equipment. So I swipe here, and then I do my 3 sets times 8 repetitions, and then it's all logged automatically in the system, right? Then I would really know how much I have been exercising. And that would be an easier user case for anyone. Or you just put up a dumbbell, and it logs because there are gyros inside, so it knows how many times you pulled it. This can be built with cheap existing technology today. And the whole health logging aspect, analyzing your poo. Well, did someone think that there are actually several people in the family, and you may have guests that will screw up your data, right? So they invent this great technology, and you need to have proper use for it. So, and how do you program then the panel so that it knows it's me? Should I have a swipe card? I swipe at the loo? No. because you're in the middle of the night. You know, let's not go into details. Oh, where did I put the swipe card? So boom. So that's, okay, so simply just when you put your hand and you touch whatever, the sensor on the toilet, and it knows it's you, and it can log the relevant data into the relevant person's file. Simple user face. And then we have the whole payment facilitation technology. So, trend spotting, for anyone who's interested in this industry, I think that this quick digital identification is a pretty exciting system now that we have this entire ecosystem of connected things coming around us. We need to find a way to interact with them that is super duper simple and doesn't require us to carry a lot of extra stuff. Health monitoring, I'm fundamentally convinced it will move under the skin just because it's so handy. Digital logins and encryption, the interesting solutions. I have now my business card here. Whomever scans my hand, you get my business details. If I also have my public encryption key on there, we can build a system where all the communication we have digitally uses my encryption key. And then actually this data is just exclusive for you and me. And if I use this as a login device to all my digital logins, I can also encrypt whatever information I share over my other channels. And this gives me a much better control of all my digital data, which is a huge problem today. And payments, I think, is also exciting. So here are some ideas. Now a quick beer break. Am I the only one? Cheers. Skål. Thanks. Get a little bit hoarse from all this talking. Okay, going back to the more broader upgrading concept. This is, I don't know if you guys have seen this lady. It was a video that it went viral a couple of years ago. It's a lady, her name is Joanne. She's from outside of Manchester in the UK, and she has a rare disease, so she's been deaf since birth. She's never heard any language spoken. She's learned to lip read and talk somewhat, but there is this video. I'm not sure if this is going to work now. Probably not. Should I click here or something? With your hand? No, this normally scrolls up when I try. Yeah, it didn't work. Never mind. You check it out later. So the point is that she gets her implants, and then they're turned on for the first time. And at the age of 39, she hears sound for the first time. And you can imagine that this is a very emotional experience to sort of have a new universe open up for you, and she falls into tears. And so would probably you and I, if sort of a completely new dimension of human communication was suddenly open to us that we had never experienced before. And then, from a more technical perspective, we talked about earlier of the senses that we have inherited. And so I made this just illustrative mapping of if you see the different senses in these dimensions, how well developed they are. Sight, we have pretty good development as a species, relatively seen. We're not as good with hearing. And then there are other species that have other senses that we don't even have. And the potential for expanding our sensory universe is pretty exciting, because I think that we go through life with this set of senses that sort of were useful when we were hunters and gatherers on the savannah or on the beach. But as a matter of fact, we live inside some kind of helmet, because we can't see very much, we can't hear very well, and we can't smell anything pretty much. And there's a lot of things we are missing out because of this rather limited sort of capabilities we have been given. So, step one, is there potential to expand these things with the help of technology? Yeah. I mean, what we see today is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. This is the visible light. Yeah, sorry.
Can our brain handle enhancement of hearing and sight and so on? So the person is...
It worked... good question. But looking at the lady who got her ear implants, I mean, she had never used that sense, and it worked fine for her. She was probably hardwired, but I personally think that the human brain is extremely plastic, and we have. This is all about upgrades. Yeah, you had a question.
I would think that our brain adapts very slowly to this. And also, I mean, I haven't seen a video, but I would assume that the person who has never heard has no idea how to process this information. So it will take a long time to actually learn how to interpret those signals.
I'm sure that, for example, differs very much with age. If you're 5 or 55, it probably makes a big difference. But
I mean, it's possible, I think, also at old age, and it would be the same for a new sense, let's say. The brain would be able to adapt when it just takes.
And if you add on some electrocution excitement of the brain, the learning development is probably quicker, as proven in some cases. Yeah? Now let's see with the striped shirt.
If I'm not mistaken, there was a couple of years ago a gentleman who replaced. He was blind, so he started using rewiring his hearing or whatever he was hearing towards.
He was colorblind.
Yeah. Colorblind,
Yeah.
exactly. And then it took a bit of while until his brain adjusted, but as I understood, it was just a couple of weeks. And he was also talking about upgrades.
This is a fascinating gentleman. His name is Neil Harbison. He put a little sensor in the back of his head and an extra eye on an antenna. And the eye sends out a different tone, auditory tone, depending on the color. So when he looks at this wall, he gets the tone for black. And he says, I now dream in these tones. So it's pretty awesome how the brain models these things afterwards. Comment?
Yeah, it was just comment on the hardwiring thing. There was a case a few years ago with a little girl in England, who had terrible seizures. So the doctors, without knowing the consequences, went in and actually removed half the brain. So actually the half that, you know how it crosses over, so one half of your brain controls the other side. Within 2 years, the other half had taken over full control of the body. So it actually did functions that it wasn't hardwired to do.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point in proving the awesome plasticity of the human brain. Comment?
Yeah. Going back to the question about old and young with cochlear implant, if you get a cochlear implant as an adult, you'll never be able to process language with hearing, but if you get it as a child, you will be able to understand auditory language. So an adult loses that capability. Like we've talked about a couple of times, we just become limited with time. So adult cochlear implant.
That sucks. We need to look into that as well. But thank you very much for that comment. And you're a doctor, right? So you know what you're talking about. Make notes. Principle. Sorry, I need to move on a couple of slides. We'll talk soon. So anyway, the fact that we see the colors we see, it's just pretty much random, because that was useful for us when in order to, this is a blueberry and this is a raspberry type of survival. But for bees, for example, they have developed a different sight spectrum. So they see much more into the ultraviolet, which is great when you fly out in the dark, for example. And they see beautiful flowers that we just don't see. And I think, and the thesis I'm building here is that we are missing out on a lot of beautiful experiences out there because of our very limited senses, because of these helmets that we carry around. You could also imagine seeing in infrared, that's like snakes do. So they can find the rabbit in the dark. And the hearing range is just completely different for different species. Humans, here we are. Dogs have 5 times the hearing, cats have 6 times the hearing, and bats, and yeah, you can tell for yourself. It's just a completely different spectrum of hearing. How many beautiful things are we missing out on? Hearing, imagine what music could be if we had 7 times the hearing spectrum.
Or the sound of your device.
Yeah, exactly, you would hear that. So we would need to improve the technology, because it definitely is a lot of sound pollution we are not picking up. True points. maybe even the vibrations from outer space.
Yeah, you want to coordinate that with the people that are doing wireless power for devices via ultrasound, because
That would
get that ability and then turn that system on.
Indeed. We would need to change the world around us, but technology is rather quick to change. And we would suddenly understand why the dog does suddenly start behaving strangely, because we would hear the annoying sound. This can be done. I mean, in terms of technology, with certain implants, or you can have implants in your eye, for example, that refracts the spectrum into your eye. There's a different aspect completely if you look at them. Here I just put a couple of random senses that exist in the animal kingdom that we humans don't have at all. Like perceiving not electric shocks, but weak electric currents, perceiving magnetic fields, or echolocation, like bats who fly in the dark, or birds who navigate by sensing the magnetic fields. Thoughts?
Hasn't echolocation been achieved by some humans?
I mean, with certain devices, yeah, you can do it.
No, I think there was a documentary with a guy who was blind.
Awesome. He walked around and clicked, and okay, good skill on that guy. That means it can be done for us as well. Thought back there? About smart drugs, we can talk about that a little bit afterwards, after the camera is off. That's okay? Electroreception is what one of my favorite animals, the platypus, uses to find its food in like worms and little things in the mud. I mean, eyesight is pretty useless if you swim in the muddy water. And so, I mean, all these things are available to humans with a little bit of, if you can have magnetic implants in your hands that allow you to feel magnetic reception. I don't know if there's anyone in here, but an increasing number of people are getting that. It's pretty cool. I experimented myself with gluing magnets onto my fingernails. And, I could perceive magnetic fields. I could feel when I was close to metal. It was a pretty interesting experience. It was a cheap, quick and dirty hack, But seriously, we have nature and we have the animals, but we can probably do better than nature if we want to upgrade. We know for a fact that there are certain trained dogs who can smell cancer. Now, wouldn't that be interesting if we could sort of have that technology in our noses? I also am a big fan of this guy in London who is deaf, and he's got cochlear implants, but he's also tuned them to be able to hear Wi-Fi's. And what he's done, and this is just fantastic hack, is based on the IP number, it creates a little melody tune that is unique for each network. So he has a move when he walks down the street just around the block in London. And the locations of individual routers, he can hear how close he is by the intensity of the music, and then he learns to recognize, okay, that's the Ernst & Young office right there, and that's the nice cafe on the corner. Isn't that pretty awesome? And I think that leads us into what I wanted to ask you guys, namely, for a modern time, and why don't we take a couple of minutes to discuss this at our tables, what are really useful sort of senses today? Just like, I mean, would it be useful to be able to taste additives in your food? Or to feel, for example, if there is a nuclear pollution, we would immediately feel it. Why don't you take a few minutes and just explore this together? What do you say? You okay time-wise? You having fun? Yeah. Good. Okay, guys. Hey, guys. I think we can continue this conversation for some time, but I'd just like to hear sort of the best idea from each table. You guys want to start?
Okay, we've talked about dogs. They smell the other sex in the air to see if they're really willing to have sex. My sense is that when you walk into a room with an awesome.
But what would men smell like then? Sorry, it was a bad... You guys, what did you think of?
To enhance our sense of taste, so that nutritious food tastes better, like better food, so that we don't eat so much salt and sweet
And all these chemical additives and sort of pollutants.
stuff that's good for us will taste better.
Awesome. Sorry, one per table. You guys?
We actually thought about something similar, but I just came to think of another thing I thought would be really useful in an age of abundance, which would be the sort of the bird sense, where you could sense an electromagnetic field. So I imagine in an age of abundance, you just walk out into the world to taste whatever is out there. So be able to find your way back home without any sort of navigational system would be pretty fucking awesome.
Wouldn't we love to do that? Okay, here we go.
Interesting to be able to measure conductivity of fingertips, like when you touched or partner, but sort of like get a sense of their mood, their conductivity, something of this.
Understanding other people is something we need to be much better with. Yeah. Good one.
The whole concept of pollution is definitely something I think it's important to think about, because you need time to process information. Having a lot is just going to create less processing time for each input. So it's probably something like a predator state where you can turn things on and off would be ideal.
Interesting. You guys?
Yeah, improve sight, normal vision, perhaps in hand vision, so you can zoom in on objects pretty often.
Absolutely. I mean, zooming in, like eagles do, they can see a little rat at 500 meters, and whether it's left-handed or right-handed.
So 360 vision.
Yeah. Definitely needed. You guys?
I'll be really awkward, but a sense of exponential perception.
Ah, good. That's a software hack. That's not just an eye upgrade. Very good. Lady?
Sorry, I just wanted to kind of clarify on some stuff. This happens to be the field that I work in, so sensory and olfaction in particular. And just to answer a question that was said here about what can the brain perceive, I think just a few specifics on that. It's not so much what can our brain handle, but it's the way that our senses are designed in terms of receptors. If you want to bypass the receptors, that's one thing. But our receptors end up having a threshold, and it gets quite complicated. So you have a threshold in terms of how much information it can interpret, and that's been left over from evolutionary biology. So, for example, if something is around for a long time at a very high level, it's obviously not danger, so it's not relevant. So your senses learn to block it out. So it's more complicated when you talk about something like hearing. And people that, in general, you tend to put music really loud because you think that's how you're going to hear it the most, but the way that your auditory sense works is it actually aggravates it. So if you hear a lot of loud music for a long time, you actually, and hearing is really complex, it's not just frequency, you have things like timbre, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into what makes up sound. But if you make it a little bit lower, you have a range of just intensity that is a better range for your ears, you can pick up more information. And so I think maybe the way that it was represented in these slides is, I get the point, but I think that there's some very valuable pieces of input with which we can work today that we actually don't need some of these ideas which are actually already feasible. Like you can smell if somebody wants to have sex with you, you just don't pay attention to it because we're so focused, and it's not a joke, you're so focused on like visual stuff. But that's actually how we choose mate. Like we identify mate selection through how we smell. And so
Most animals do, so we probably do that to a
significant extent.
We do. We smell.
Thank you for these comments. Yeah, and I totally accept that this is a conceptual, more philosophical type talk, that there are a lot of scientific details that this is not covering. Thanks.
I keep thinking that I want to have and I want to get around this way that we communicate via voice, because it's too slow. I want to speed up things, and I think telepathy is feasible with the technology we've been presented with.
No, I think that there is, imagine what it could do to learning. I mean, our current learning processes are so bad. We need to stand and sit and listen to some dude talking with how many bits per minute. Imagine if we could speed that process up of uploading information to the brain. Okay, let's move on a little bit. So this is sort of my personal summary. Why should we? And I mean, to me, I'm making this kind of a statement that it's to me it's a positive thing. That we have gotten these bodies, we were born with them, and it's a little bit like, okay, I was born in this village, but do I have to live there my whole life? So I actually think it's a positive, and the moral right thing to do is to want to upgrade our bodies. And obviously to help the people who are less fortunate and cure diseases and reduce suffering from any kind of deficit, but also to expand our capability to understand the world around us. If we could smell pollution, maybe we would treat it differently. I'll come back to this. You could also argue on a philosophical level that if you are principally believe that we should cure diseases, then if upgrades lead to an improvement in human well-being, then that is also a relevant moral thing to support. It's a discussion. But we could also look on a more society level. And as I started out, here's an astronaut flying in outer space. This is our tiny little atmosphere. This is the thin eggshell in which we spell out our lives, in which civilizations come and go, and important football games are played, right? Or completely irrelevant. And on our planet, we are, as the species, we live in the age of the Anthropocene, if you're familiar with that term. It's a new age in geographical terms, wherein the human species is the dominating geological force on this planet, in the sense that we are completely changing the ecosystem and the whole geography of this planet through our actions. And what we're seeing due to human short-sightedness is this extensive pollution and destruction of the ecosystem. We're seeing a total sort of short-term destruction of complex systems for short-term benefit. We have wars and conflicts over resources, which I think are very much based on this ancient mindset that we have, that my tribe should take some territory from that other tribe, and so we go and kick their ass with our stone clubs, or be it tanks or rockets and missiles. And these things, I think, as long as we have this primitive primate Stone Age instinct in us, we will have this type of activities. We will have rainforests cut down for profit for the next quarterly report. We will have wars over territory creating enormous suffering just to satisfy the ego of certain political leaders. Refugees, catastrophes, and human suffering. What is the ultimate cause of this? If you read the media, oh, the terrorists are waging war in the Middle East. Oh, it's the religion. Blah, blah. Oh, ask someone else. It's the capitalist system that is sucking the bone marrow out of the poor. I think there is another reason that sort of lies behind all this. that is human nature. It's human nature that was shaped by this era of evolution when we lived in this primitive state on the savannah or on the beach, and we were competing with other humans for scarce resources. And I think that, do we really want this type of primitive Stone Age brains running this planet and its ecosystem? Or is that not a total recipe for disaster? So far, it seems that we are screwing up this planet at a very rapid pace. So, is there a room for upgrade, possibly to solve that problem as well? I think so. I think that if we can improve mental capabilities with technology, it will give us a better understanding of complex systems. With better rational decision making, we will be able to take more far-sighted decisions. And if we sort of develop systems where you can actually empathize with people on a different level, we will become more ethical and more sympathetic and empathetic to each other. And why not consider, I'll come to this, but imagine if you could have neural feedback directly from the ecosystem. What would that mean? If you would feel the pain of a forest being cut down or a river being polluted, wouldn't that be pretty exciting? Wouldn't we want all our politicians to be connected to that system as a principle, and then take their decisions based on that? Yeah, you're waving head.
I was just thinking, I'm cool with your idea, but I was thinking then you have to be aware of why you're doing the thing you're doing. Then you have to be aware of the bad emotion you're creating and the positive emotion, and analyze that in a way, I don't know how, but you have to have that awareness to do those things.
Very much so.
Yeah.
As long as we are sort of meat humans in these meat bodies, we are ruled very much by feelings, and we become aware of something not by hearing an abstract talk about it, but by experiencing something physically with our bodies. That is one of my life's observations, at least. We have some more waving hands.
Please repeat the question. Would you?
Okay. Will do. Did you hear? Okay. Okay, fine. From now on, I will repeat. You were right there?
Just thinking, when you talk about this, you start your talk with saying, it's human nature to try to upgrade what human nature needs, but then we also want to upgrade to escape some parts of human nature, which is pretty interesting when a lot of cyanodogs or like these extended capabilities come from the military, which represents a very bad part of human nature, then wants to expand other parts of human nature. So it could be interesting to see how do we make sure that we enhance the good qualities and we let go of the bad qualities rather than just enhancing everything, including the bad qualities.
Yeah, that's super tricky. I don't have a good answer to that. I just...
We still have to be aware
Yeah.
we are before we can actually do something about it.
Or do we have the time to wait? You right there? Yeah, take the mic.
Yeah, okay. So the best implement is actually to stimulate the brain, as I see it. Is that correct? Or
the best to achieve what?
So the best implement we can develop now is to stimulate the brain, so we don't pollute the world and we don't start wars due to scarcity and
I think it's about improving our empathic sides, and this is why I think that we must also use technology to make ourselves more ethical beings. As ethical as humans are compared to wolves or whatever. I mean, to that kind of magnitude in terms of improvement is needed. Pass the mic to the next person, please.
Just on the direct neural feedback from ecosystems, who would set the frame for that? Because if we could feel everything, then we would never eat. I like bacon, but if I could feel like the pain of the pig, so maybe I would turn that off if it was up to myself, right? I will turn that off, and then people who would rage war on other people would turn that feedback off.
We print the bacon.
Yeah, we 3D print the bacon. Excellent answer.
how does your hacker handling time? And that was step 1. What is your step 2, 3, and 4?
I think it has some practical purposes, but for me it's mostly a statement and sort of a personal way to express that this is where I want mankind to be heading. I want people not to be afraid of using technology to improve our bodies, and by proving that this is completely harmless and that it actually makes people's lives more interesting and easier to live. So what is my next implant? I don't know, but I'm actively looking for the next stage.
I'm just curious to go back to the thing you say about politics and waging war and all this. Would you agree that for us to become that magnitude of a weird kind of illusion and dilution of power?
Democracy, as Churchill said, is the least worst system we've developed so far. So, yeah, it's not a perfect system, but it's certainly better than some other systems in terms of legitimacy and so forth. So, ultimately, yeah, I think we need a very different way to run our society, and I think artificial intelligence has a very important role to play in this system. Okay, so there's a lot of hands. Maybe we can't discuss all these things, although I would love to do. What do you say, Chris? Let's roll a few more, right? So, who hasn't just yet today? You?
You can take your turn and pass it on.
Okay.
Okay. It seems like your idea of, let's say, higher human nature, higher human ideals is very logically founded. And I'm just like getting this idea that, I mean, maybe, the emotions and even, negative emotions, what's your take on the, just inherent part of, maybe that is, that's part of human nature?
Emotion, yeah. It's part of the Homo sapiens nature, right, that we have emotions, and we think that's we probably think emotions are good, but I think it could also be because we are so used to them. I'm not saying we should get rid of emotions, but we also know that emotions can be destructive in terms of phobias or chronic depression and these things, that these are diseases we're trying to cure, right, emotions are, if you look at it evolutionary, is sort of a decision-making system, right? Okay, so you feel fear, and it's a reflex to run away when you hear some sound in the bushes. And it could just be a little mouse, but it could also be a tiger. So for me, it's sort of just an incentive system. And if you look at it from that perspective, you may think that it's possible to design other systems that perhaps are more efficient and more exact and more applied to relate to the stimuli, to the input and the eventual output.
Other more comments?
Some over here.
Just a couple of questions concerning privacy. I know we've touched a little bit upon that, but just from a little bit of a different angle. First thing I need to get out of the way is I need to know if you can honestly say that you're not on a campaign for NSA.
I can definitely say I'm not on a campaign from NSA because
cool.
My whole perspective is counter-establishment. I think that we, sort of as private citizens and as hackers and as activists, we must understand this technology before the NSA comes around and start to chip people, for example.
Okay.
So this is why we must learn about this technology so that we can question however it is applied in other parts of society.
Yeah. the fact is, of course, that all these digital things, they leave breadcrumbs all around. So since we stopped using cash, like recently here in Denmark, there was this, I don't know if you heard about it, where this weekly magazine or daily magazine, this tabloid thing, spied on famous people because they could tell where they had been by their credit card information. So the more digital breadcrumbs we leave around, the more easy it becomes for people to spy on us. So my question is, do you think in the future that we will actually be required by government to have these implants and be suspicious in a way if we're not willing to have some chip?
I would be totally suspicious if any kind of authority, government or a company, was in any way forcing people to have implants. I find that whole idea completely revolting. And from a pure technology perspective, it's because there are perfect substitutes for having an implant. You could have a ring, for example, or a wristband, or you can have something on your key, and these are perfect substitutes. So this is sort of a personal choice for someone who doesn't want to carry a lot of stuff in their pockets and suddenly stand the risk that, oops, I forgot my keys, so I can't get into my office.
Okay, thanks.
Two more, and then I'll round off my presentation. Yeah, okay.
For some reason, many of the questions around why not to have it, I think you raised some very valid points in why to have it. The main arguments you hear from you shouldn't have it, what are those? Because I can't really think of any.
Besides the religious arguments?
No, do you have any valid arguments?
No, I mean...
Religious not being one of those.
No, exactly. I don't... there is no real health hazard. There's no radiation from these implants. There is no battery that has health leakage. There is no any chemical active aspect to the body. And these cannot be tracked unless, because you can only read them from a very short distance. So yeah, from my perspective, there really are no major negative effects with having an implant. It's really no big deal. But there is a huge emotional sort of dimension to this, which make this very charged for a lot of people.
You talked earlier about sensory skills and the brain kind of handling all that. But the connection in between the brain and all this stuff, we saw something yesterday with the EEG. But how far in the future do you think it is before we can read and write that precisely to the brain? Information to the brain? Yeah.
It's speculative. I mean, I don't know the neurology that well, but I just know that our brain is a very, very unreliable information storage system. And we forget a lot of things, and we also create a lot of memories. This science has proven some interesting things that you can actually... They made a test and they told a bunch of people that, your mom forgot you at the mall and you got lost for a whole day when you were 5 years old. And when asked about this later, I mean, more than half the group actually could remember this and told a story, even though it was completely made up. So this system is completely unreliable, or it is from memory and perspectives, and it needs to be improved. Exactly how and when, I'm not sure. We still rely on sort of external memory drives for the time being. I would love to have a hard drive up here, of course. Then.
Thanks.
Thank you for all these exciting questions. I'm going to round off now and we'll continue the discussion afterwards, I hope, if you're not too tired. Something happened here too. Is there? Okay. So, like it or not, guys, I think that we have entered a new evolutionary period. Biological evolution, the concept we were taught in school, it's a slow process. It works, generations are long, unless you're a bacteria. But speaking of humans here. More importantly, biological evolution doesn't work towards any specific objective. It's really sort of more a shotgun approach. You do all these mutations and see who survives best to the next generation. And then you do all this spread again. And what we're seeing is that, and I let Ray Kurzweil represent this, technological evolution has completely taken over as sort of the force-changing for our species and for our ecosystem, what is running. And the development time of technological evolution, if you look at smartphones, or if you look at software systems, or if you look at apps, it's extremely rapid compared to the biological system. And more importantly, it's here fun to use the term intelligent design, isn't it? We can design with a purpose, right? Let's say we wanted to set up some life form on Mars, and we would like to have some bacteria there or whatever. If you would use the biological evolution type way to do it, we would send enormous loads of different bacteria, and we just see, okay, which one survives, and maybe that one will reproduce. But what we can do now, thanks to synthetic biology, is we can sit down with these Lego pieces and we can design an exact life form that can live on Mars. Okay, so it must have this resistance to cold, this resistance to radiation, this level of humidity, click, 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 click. And it's enough to send one single bacteria to Mars to populate the planet. That is a completely new level in human society and civilization. Like it or not. So, to round off, just sort of on a more emotional trajectory, what can we do if we give ourselves some more capabilities? I like these pictures. There's, have you seen this, the extreme deep field? They pointed the Hubble telescope at one point in space which was completely black. There was nothing very interesting there. And it's about a millionth of the sky, this little square. And what did we find in that black empty spot? More than 4,000 new galaxies. Each of them, on average, 4 billion stars in that single corner of the universe. So there are so many things out there to see and explore. And imagine if we could have sort of the capability of the Hubble telescope in our own eyes. Would we look different on these trivial activities on this planet if we could see supernovas out there? Would it matter, you know, the football score or the Melodifestivalen, right? There's some serious stuff going on out there, and we don't see it because we have these primate eyes, right? We see dogs and cats and footballs. This idea of connecting the planet, we already have systems of sensors all over the planet, checking for earthquakes and for tsunamis, and we have satellites taking pictures of most of the planet all around. I mean, imagine if you could connect that to a system on your body, and you would feel what's going on the planet. When there was a tsunami, you would feel it flowing through your body. If there was an earthquake, it would rumble somewhere. You know. If someone cut down a forest, it would feel like ripping the hair off your arm, right? So, wouldn't that be cool? You wouldn't want it all the time on, as someone cleverly pointed out, but as part of education, right? As part of going to school, or as part of getting a political office, wouldn't that be an interesting simulator to spend a weekend? And then we have the whole nanobots idea. Imagine if you could have your body full of these tiny, tiny sensors logging sort of every chemical reaction, every hormone, every feeling in your body. We know that this technology is not that far away. And you can actually log this and understand all these metabolical and chemical things that's going on in your body. But then imagine if you just didn't log it, but instead if you connected that to another person's brain, so that I would really, really feel how you feel. Wouldn't that be quite exciting? To feel someone else's fear, but also to feel someone else's love for real, how it is in that body. That would make us a completely different type of species. Oh, I'm sure you can. So, we are all this lady in two ways. We live in a limited little space in our little sensory helmet. So we are like her. We just don't see it that way because we think we are normal. But more importantly, we are like her in one more way, and that is beautiful, beautiful experiences await us when we open up to these new experiences. And I can't wait for that day myself. Thank you very much.